Hey everybody, welcome to Weekend Wrap. I'm Darren Bob. We've got the biggest stories from the past 7 days, along with some news you may have missed. We're going to go in depth on what we've learned about the Epstein files, the potential of a $2,000 check from the federal government, as well as a local study asking the questions, are humans domesticating raccoons? And of course, a very special Vault clip of the week where we talk to the subject of a report we did 40 years ago in 1985. Talk to him 40 years later right here in the studio. First, though, Congressman Steve Womack, who represents Northwest Arkansas, announced for the first time in his congressional career that he would not be taking part in House votes this week, including the one that cleared the way to release the Epstein files due to a family emergency. That vote turned out to be much more bipartisan than anybody expected. Came after President Trump first told Congress to vote it down before saying it should pass. Congressman Womack said he backed the 427-1 result, saying, had I been in D.C. today, I would have voted in support of H.R. 44005, the Epstein Files Transparency Act, because the pursuit of justice should not be influenced by political ideology, wealth, and power, and perpetrators of crimes as serious as child exploitation must be exposed and held accountable. Epstein was a well-connected New York City financier with ties to some of the world's most influential elite. He pled guilty to a felony prostitution charge in 2008, an investigation in which the FBI identified 36 victims. He was also found dead in his jail cell in 2019 after he was charged with sex trafficking and conspiracy to traffic minors, charges he never stood trial for. Ghislaine Maxwell, a socialite who was one of the closest people in Epstein's orbit for decades, was convicted in 2021 for conspiring with Epstein to sexually abuse minors. On Wednesday night, President Trump announced he signed that legislation. The Department of Justice now has a month to release all unclassified files. Natalie Brand has more details now from the White House.
With the bill to release the Epstein files signed into law, the Attorney General has 1 month to produce unclassified and investigative documents related to convicted sex offender Jeffrey Epstein and his convicted co-conspirator Ghislaine Maxwell.
We'll continue to follow the law and to have maximum transparency.
That could include flight logs, interviews, and the names of individuals, including government officials referenced in connection with Epstein's criminal activities and plea agreements. But the legislation also includes a provision that allows the DOJ to temporarily withhold information that could jeopardize any active federal investigation. Last week, President Trump ordered a new probe into Democrats associated with Epstein. Some lawmakers worry that could delay the release of some files.
We think every name should come out, everything. There should be no cover-up.
Reporters asked Attorney General Pam Bondi what triggered the new probe, despite the DOJ's comments back in July that no additional investigations were warranted.
Information that has come for there's information that new information, additional information, and again, we will continue to follow the law, to investigate any leads.
Tom Dupree is a former federal prosecutor.
Obviously, they have had prior investigations. They have had prior criminal proceedings arising from this. So presumably, they've already plowed this ground fairly extensively. That said, it's always possible that new information could come to light.
Epstein survivors have said they want maximum transparency and the entirety of the files, not bits and pieces or mass redactions. Natalie Brand, CBS News, the White House.
By the way, the 30-day clock to release the files expires on December 20th. The bill calls for the documents to come out in a public and searchable format. A big development in a case we've been following for months. 2 people now under arrest in the July shooting death of Benton County wrestler Kevin Nickel, also known as Ivan Warsaw. His family and friends told 5 News anchor Morgan Wrigley that while the arrest offers some relief, their fight for answers is far from over.
The Benton County Sheriff's Office says Monday's arrests are the result of months of investigating the murder of Kevin Nickel. We sat down with Nickel's mother, Susan Kinderman, and his close friend, Logan Pendergraph, at his favorite restaurant where a booth now sits in his honor.
Yeah, we had our first wrestling meet and greet here. When he was in town, he'd come over here and hang out with us kind of most of the day, and just brought a lot of life to it.
They say the arrests are a positive step, but they're still waiting for answers.
I know that the justice system will work, I want to make sure that we know exactly what happened and why.
The U.S. Marshals Service arrested Michael Hogue and Amanda Penny on Benton County warrants tied to Nichols' death. Investigators say Nichol was found with a gunshot wound along Highway 12 in July and later died at a hospital. Hogue is charged with first-degree murder. Penny is charged with accomplice to first-degree murder. Both also face firearm charges. Kinderman says her son and Penny had been together since high school and had recently finalized their divorce.
They started to grow apart, and neither one of them were happy.
She says Penny and Hogue were in a relationship, and Kinderman says detectives have shared limited details, but she believes an argument between the three led to a late-night meeting on Highway 12.
I was told by the detectives that there was some kind of altercation. Shots were fired, and Kevin was killed, and that's all we really know.
As they wait for more information, Nichols' family and friends say they're grateful to see the case moving forward.
Some people wait years. Some people, they never know. So 4 months, actually, if you look at the big picture, is not that long.
It doesn't bring him back, but just knowing that they're not running around and kind of rubbing it in the face of his friends and family, it makes me feel really good.
Now, loved ones are focused on remembering Kevin's life.
I want to remember how funny he was, how generous he was.
It changed my life completely, so never will forget that about him.
In Rogers, covering news where you live, Morgan Wrigley, 5 News.
Hogue and Penny were in court this week where a bail was set for both. Hogue was assigned a bail of $750,000 because of the nature of the case and his criminal history. Penny was given a bail of $500,000. A shocking end to a double homicide in Eureka Springs after an elderly couple was found dead in their Eureka Springs home after police were performing a welfare check. Investigators announced that the couple's son, who was in custody for the double homicide, died by suicide in an Oklahoma jail cell. Carroll County Sheriff Daniel Klatt told us this case moved very quickly, crossing state lines and involving more than a dozen law enforcement agencies. Here's 5 News reporter Lauren Spencer with more.
It started with a welfare check on November 14th. Family members from out of state asking deputies to check on 77-year-old Joy Wilmoth and 71-year-old Robert Wilmoth.
They were able to find an open door, an unlocked door, and they unfortunately found the 2 victims.
The Wilmoth's son, 56-year-old Travis McConnell, lived at home but was nowhere to be found. Robert Wilmoth's truck was also missing, and soon deputies say they learned McConnell was already a suspect a state away.
When we started sending out BOLOs for the vehicle and for him, an officer from a Missouri agency got a hold of us and said, hey, we had an incident involving him 2 nights ago.
That incident, an assault where McConnell allegedly rammed a woman with a truck and opened fire, telling her he'd killed people in Arkansas.
We were able to take that information and use some investigative techniques to track his movements from the time of when we suspect potentially that the murder happened and then to the incident that happened in Missouri. Through that, we were able to determine that he was somewhere in Oklahoma.
McConnell was found the same day, arrested in Pittsburg County, Oklahoma, and driving his father's truck. And just days later, authorities say he was found dead in his jail cell, reportedly by suicide.
It's my understanding he was in a single-person cell and he hung himself.
Still, Sheriff Klatt says the case is not closed.
We will continue the investigation to prove that this individual was the one responsible for those deaths.
He says this case shows how quickly agencies can locate suspects when they work together.
In 12 hours, we had the scene processed, the individual in custody.
The sheriff says investigators are still reviewing evidence. He says the goal now is closure for the Wilmoth family. Coming up after the break, we're going to tackle one of our top trending stories this week. What's the likelihood we get a $2,000 check from the federal government? More about that coming up. A federal report on missing and murdered Indigenous people has been removed from the Justice Department's website, and tribal advocates across Oklahoma say it could make communities less safe. 5 News reporter Bo Russell shares why one state law is at the center of their concerns.
For Lorenda Morgan, the fight against the missing and murdered Indigenous persons crisis is personal. She helped write Ida's Law, named for her cousin, Ida Beard, who went missing in 2015.
And I was one of the co-authors for Ida's Law in Oklahoma. Ida's Law is named after my cousin Ida Beard, who went missing in 2015. And her case, I felt, wasn't appropriately investigated.
Morgan says the Not One More report, now removed from the DOJ's website, is a tool that advocates, students, and law enforcement use to understand how these cases fall through the cracks.
These are missing and murdered Indigenous people information and data can be used by people, students, law enforcement officers going through training.
In Durant, Jennifer Spainhour with MMIW Choctaw says losing easy access to that data sets their work back.
It makes it increasingly harder for our advocates, our law enforcement agencies to get the information that they need.
She says the removal, which the DOJ links to a review of DEI-related material, feels like another blow to families who already struggle to get attention on their cases.
It felt more like silencing our voices again. It felt more like our daughters, our mothers, our sisters, our friends, our aunts and our uncles and our family members were silenced.
Morgan says that impact extends far beyond one document, and that the reality of these cases is that many never receive the urgency they deserve.
Sometimes those cases sit, sometimes they don't make it past the district attorney's office to file any charges, as a lot of Native cases go cold.
Our expectation is for the federal government to treat our nations as sovereign partners. Removing that report for over 300 days ago has hindered access for crucial information.
That was Bo Russell reporting, and we are told that many tribal advocates still have saved copies of that report, but they want it back on the federal site to ensure public access. All right, a quick break, and we've got a little bit more when we come back. Welcome back to the Weekend Wrap. Researchers at UA Little Rock analyzing nearly 20,000 raccoon images from all across the country, and they found that urban raccoons tend to have shorter snouts than those in rural areas. It's a physical trait linked to what scientists call domestication syndrome. Researchers say the results support the neural crest domestication syndrome theory. It's the same model used to explain how early dogs develop different features than their wild ancestors. Domesticating raccoons, and they say this generation won't be known for anything. All right, our vault clip of this week, first filmed over 40 years ago in Fayetteville, and follows the man who managed the Fayetteville Community Garden back in 1985. Check this out.
Henry Gaston knows how to make things grow. He practices that art in the Fayetteville Community Garden, a 2-acre plot on the west side of town. The garden is a cooperative effort. As manager, Henry works with each of the 10 families who rent garden patches.
A lot of the people that come around, they are not acquainted with gardening, and they ask me this maybe, and I give them a recommendation on, they may want to know how wide to plant the corn or how deep. So I'm sort of around to sort of help everyone out, that needs help.
When he isn't helping other gardeners, Henry Gaston has his own crops to grow. A good garden needs hard work, and Gaston puts in several hours a day. He grows a bit of everything on his share of the garden: corn, okra, southern peas, summer squash, fall tomatoes, even a couple varieties of watermelon. What do you get out of the community garden?
Vegetables.
I knew you were going to say that. This is the last year for the community garden, at least on this site. Gaston says the man who owns the land is planning to farm it himself next year. So Henry Gaston is looking for a new place to rent for his gardeners and his garden. In Fayetteville, this is Steve Voorhees reporting for the News People.
Now, the story of the community garden may have ended shortly after the cameras stopped rolling, but the story of Henry Gaston certainly did not, to our surprise, when 5 News digital producer Logan Begnaud looked into what became of Gaston since 1985. He found that not only is he still in the area, he opened up his own landscaping business right in his backyard. Gaston, his children, and his grandchildren have owned and operated Henry's Landscaping in Fayetteville for 30 years now. Gaston kindly agreed to sit down for a follow-up interview 40 years later.
How did this start, essentially? Was this something that's always been in your family?
Well, I grew up on a farm. I think I did.
I mean, I seen some stuff that looked like a farm. So you always, you know, get a little bit of this, a little bit of that. We did a lot of vegetables. We had animals. My great uncle, he'd say, "Are you traveling or are you going somewhere?" And I thought, I did little handy jobs, handyman. I do a lot of mowing, and I really love the mowing, just actually being outside. Well, I did the community garden for a couple of years, and then I say, where do I go from here? Because I went to the university, and I didn't only want to do horticulture, but I want to do something of my own. You know, America, be your own boss. Yeah, right. So I started landscaping. I stayed there with the community garden because it was becoming more popular. After that closed down, we kept on looking for other places to start community garden, and you know, you have to have people that want to do that. And sometimes it's hard to get a new project off the ground than one that's already. So it just kind of said, well, you need more than one person to have a community garden. You need land, you need some kind of equipment, you need people that want to actually come and say, this is my plot, this is your...
Can you bridge the gap a little bit from 40 years ago to now in terms of your business? Have you found success, hardships, difficulties?
Yes.
Yes.
It's a smorgasbord. Like it's kind of like a pizza. Some of the stuff you do like, some of the stuff you don't like. Business in this area, starting a business is excellent. I mean, because you have a mixture of different peoples from different cultures, and what I grew up with, peoples around here may not know, but I grew up around snakes, and so I have a terror of snakes, unless you're cooking them, you know, rattlesnake. Other people say, let that snake live. You know, first time I seen a snake come through, and I thought, kill him. I thought that's what you do, kill him, skin him, you know. But you know, landscaping is a little clipping of everything. That's why they call it landscape. If you go up high enough in an airplane, you can look down and see the globe of the world, and it's just like nicely, neatly landscaped. You know, the water, trees, and everything. Oh, look at that. That's where I live. I didn't know it's so small. So it's all in perspective, you know, pulling it together. This is this, and I always was taught in landscaping, you never do a picture to where people can see everything at one time. You know, you want to create that object of surprise when they walk away. Look at that, it's a big swimming pool. Or a koi pond, or you walk in at night and the lights outside along the driveway come, that's snooty. A lot of the kids that are coming up now will never experience what a ripe vegetable tastes like unless they go to the farmer's market. And I had a friend, she was going to university. She come over to the house, and I was showing her the garden, and I said, hey, have you ever had a fresh carrot? She said, no, a carrot? And she said, well, come over here. And we walk around, and she kind of looked at me like, carrot? And I pulled the dirt back and pulled up this carrot about this long. She said, I'm not going to eat that. I'm saying, why not? You didn't know carrots come from the ground?
If I were somebody looking to get into gardening and landscaping right now in 2025,
okay,
what would you tell me?
Run! No. You know, people's ask me that. You know, it's one of those things. You have to have a love for outside. You have to have a patience. Landscaping is like success, and you know, success has you do the same thing over and over and over and over, and finally you get where you want to. And see, that's the thing about it. You know, the farmers is out there, they do the same thing over here. Oh, here we go again. Feed, 5, 4, farm, plant the seed, plow the garden, and you know, finally at the end you get a fruit. So, you know, it's one of those things, you have to stay at it. You have to stick at it.
I just had one more question. It's,
Okay.
what do you get out of gardening?
It's my granddaughter said at 6 years old, she seen the tape that you released, and she said, "Oh, Papa, you're helping people out. You're helping people. That's so wonderful. You're helping people out, and you're preserving nature."
My goodness, 40 years later, hasn't changed a bit. All right, thank you for joining us for another Weekend Wrap. I'm Darren Bob. We will see you next week.